The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
This week on Garden Connections, we're getting our seeds ready indoors so we can put them in the garden when the time is right. Is your green thumb ready? Stay with us. You're watching Garden Connections. Welcome to Garden Connections. I'm Amy Whitaker. Thank you for joining us. I'm happy to introduce Cindy, and she is here to help us start a garden. We welcome your participation in preparing for spring planting. Call in and pose your questions. So Cindy, today we are going to talk about starting seeds indoors.
Yes, we are. And the first thing we're going to do, we're going to clean our table with a 10% bleach solution so we don't have any nasties getting into our plants before we even get them going.
All right, I will step back and let you clean away. So the bleach solution we want to use on our table surfaces, is there anything else we would want to use that on?
This bleach solution?
Yeah.
Oh, your cupboards at home, you could do them, you know.
Well, I was thinking like tools or...
Oh, definitely. Clean your tools up. Anything that's going to be touching your plants. You can soak your gloves in them. Most of the gloves will handle that all right. And, well, you can smell it.
Oh, yes. If we're reusing plastic from the previous year,
Yes.
say cell packs, anything like that, do you want to sanitize those as well?
You want to sanitize those. Find a big bucket, put them in there, pour it's 1 part bleach to 9 parts of water, and just soak them. You want to do it at least about 10 minutes. Let them soak in there. Any diseases, insects, anything that was in there that may have killed your plants last year. Sometimes that's why you have that pot. You dump something out and put it away. But you get those things cleaned up, sanitize, so we don't bring the fungus in or the disease or insects. Okay, so we're clean, and what we're going to talk about right now is our soils.
Okay.
Before we get anything started, we're going to talk about the soils. So we have a seed starter mix here. I have vermiculite, and I have a regular potting mix. And this time of year I always walk around with my knife in my pocket so we can open these guys up and we can take a handful out and show what we've got. And
All
I
right.
think we're going to pour something in here.
So we have got, what's this first one you're pouring out?
This is the perlite. Looks like styrofoam. And then another one you can use is vermiculite. So this is perlite vermiculite. It's very, very light, but it's absorbent. So it's going to take some water in there and it'll hold it good for you. We're going to take the seed starter and I'm going to go on this corner. Again, it's very light, it's fine, so that works real good, very light. And again, this one is peat moss, vermiculite, and a little bit of perlite. I think there's perlite in this one.
Peat moss, vermiculite, and limestone for a pH adjuster.
Okay, anyway, when you add the water to this, right now it's very dry. When you add the water to it, the peat moss absorbs all that water, the vermiculite absorbs water, and it holds it. I know there's some people that when they start working with the seed starter, they have a hard time getting the water into it because when you add the water, if I were to add water to this right now, just dump it in there, it would float.
I've heard that using warm water
helps.
is a good way to get it moistened. It seems to absorb it faster instead of
We're going to switch the bags like this so we've got them in the order so people can see what we've got there. But what we've got, the warm water, another idea is taking this and pouring it in a bucket, like a 5-gallon bucket that you might have from construction or something, make sure it's clean before you add your soil. And then add the water to it and let it soak overnight. So that's a good one too. So once you get that water in there and let it soak up, then the next day you're ready to start doing
So maybe a day in advance, get everything
get your
moistened
soil
and
moist.
ready to go.
Okay, I'm just going to move these out of the way for right now.
This one down here.
And I've got one here that I added water to. And what you want is, you know, grab that soil and you got a little bit of water that comes out. That's how you want it.
Not dripping wet.
You don't want it dripping wet. And we'll fluff this up a little bit. And this one is actually this one right here. So that's the same thing. How that
I've
looks.
noticed all of these are what are considered soilless mixes.
Soilless mixes.
What is the importance of it being soilless?
If you go out to your garden and dig some garden dirt, soil, and bring that in, you're also bringing the disease and insects in there too. You can do it. What you might want to do to sanitize that is put it in the oven for a while. About 350 for maybe about 15 minutes, I think. We had a college project, or my ex-husband had a college project where they took garden dirt and sanitized it and bagged it up for people and sold it to them so they didn't have to do it themselves. So it's one of those fun little things. So
soilless is cleaner and it's also lighter.
Also lighter, because you get, you know, something like this into your hanging basket later on. If you take your garden dirt, that's heavy. You want something lighter so it's not going to break your brackets off or things like that. For seed starting, these little guys are very delicate, and you don't want something crusty and heavy and full of clay soil, because they need to come through that. So in starting seeds, most of the ones you're going to start indoors, you want to have lighter soil because they are a more delicate seed. Okay?
All right. That's a good
Now.
start. Now, where do we go from here?
We're going to look at seed packets. There's so many different things that you can get now, and the instructions are on the back side of them. And I think we'll just read some of these to see what we've got. That tells you planting depth. I've got rutabaga here. 1/4 inch is all the deeper you want to plant that. You know, it's got to be able to come up through the soil. And you know, it tells you maturity dates. 90 days on that one, so you want to find where your last frost is going to be, or your first frost, I should say, you know, in September. So count back, that's when you can plant these guys outside. What you're going to find out in looking at the seed packets, a lot of them want to be planted outside in the ground right away. I always laugh at people that want to start the squash and pumpkins. You know, should I start them now? It's like, no, you'll have a plant this long, you put it out and it will die, because that stem is weak and it can't handle it.
So there are some things that are better to just wait until the soil warms up a little bit and plant them right outside instead of starting them indoors.
There are some things that do need to have a little jump start, like our peppers. Peppers are a very slow starter. And, you know, I think it tells you on there, start indoors 7 to 8 weeks before the last frost.
And days to germination, 14 to 21. So that's going to be quite a long germination period.
And I think I have tomatoes here someplace.
I see radishes. There we go.
I have, this one is, I was going to say it was an heirloom. Nope, this one's not. But the tomatoes are another one that generally do better if you can plant them indoors. These will work outdoors though. So tomatoes, I mean, you get tomatoes that are left over from your garden last fall, and about June you'll see them coming up out of your garden all over the place.
But as a general rule, if it's something that we buy, say, in a 4-pack in the stores, we could probably start it indoors ourselves.
Right. And you can buy your own little tray with 4-packs in there. You can put your soil in there, and you want to go generally about 1/2 inch. So when you start putting your soils in there, about 1/2 inch from the top. Okay, and then you can put your seeds in there, and well, maybe I will do this. I got a little bit of water. And you can see how that floats too. What do we want to start?
peppers. There's some peppers.
There's the pepper. And it's always fun to look at the difference in the seeds too. Now you can see it's soaking in. So if you're not going with a, large, I'm going to do an acre of peppers, that's going to take a long time to put one seed in each spot. But if you get in there and put a couple of them in there, okay, and it's a little not ready yet, but we'll put a little more on. Okay, and that'll soak in, but you do want to wait until we're rushing it here. Put a couple of seeds in the trays, because then you can go back later and you can pinch off the weaker plant, and that'll you only want one plant in any one of these little cells. Otherwise, you're going to have two weak plants.
But if you start with, say, 2 or 3, just to make sure you get something to come up in each pack, you can thin them out later.
Yep, and try to keep your healthiest one in there. One thing that we do when we're starting a lot of tomatoes in the greenhouse out at where we're working is the boss will make a line and he'll sprinkle the seeds in that little row, and then he'll come back later and just put a little more seed starter on there, and we'll have it started low. And then when I go to transplant, what I do is I just come in with my fingers and I pull that up real lightly, and it just loosens all the roots up, and then I can take that little plant and transplant it into a little bit larger pot.
So we can start with just a tray like this and seed in rows, and then bump up to this size, or we could seed
start in
right
this way.
into that.
So like he started my cabbage already, which really should have waited, but it's a done deal. So all of those seeds are small enough but still easy enough to work with that he was able to get 1 or 2 seeds in each little one, and we can go back later and take out the weaker ones and leave the healthy plant in there. So
sometimes the smaller the seed, the more difficult it is to handle. It may be worth starting it in more of a row type setting instead of the packs.
Yep.
What else do we have here
Well, I'm going to open up some seed packets so people can see, what they're looking like. We already had.
And if you want to put it in my hand, I can hold it up for
there's your pepper.
Probably.
Let's do a radish.
What would you say those are? 1/8 inch, a little better?
Yeah, they're not a quarter. I would say probably closer to 1/8 of an inch. And then I have some radishes here. There we go on those. So they're round. So those are the ones that are easy for me to plant, because I just go and roll, and you can feel it drop out of your hand as you go along.
A little bit smaller, but still easy, because they've got a little bit more solid.
Let's put some seeds in there. I don't know if we'll be able to. We can back this up. Bean seeds and pea seeds. Those are fun.
Those are nice and big too.
Nice and big. And that's one thing with when you're starting the seeds, how much soil do we put over the top of them? Kind of a general rule is you put as much dirt on top as they are big. So you're only going to put, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch at most. Where your bean seeds, you could
put
put
those.
those.
1/2 inch.
Yep, you could put 1/2 inch to 1 inch on those guys. There we go. And I think this is the one I want.
So lots of variation in seed size.
There
and
are.
ease of handling.
You can get there are some little fun ones.
Ooh, those are teeny.
Those are teeny tiny, and this is one of those plants, the pansies, where I would just rather buy it in a 4-pack because this one you have to have a cooler temperature, soil temperature when you're starting. Most seeds will do best at 70 degrees. These guys like it cooler. So it gets a little fun there. Okay. So again, read the package. It tells you a little bit about the plant. It tells you if you need to start it indoors. It tells you how soon to start it indoors. And then it goes on too to tell you how, not just how deep, but how far apart you want to plant.
Okay, and we actually just had a caller question wondering how long before this stuff is safe to put outside.
Okay. And we've got a chart on that too. There's some plants that do better in cooler weather. Our lettuce broccoli, cabbage, kohlrabi, things like that. Carrots aren't too bad. You can start those a little earlier. Here, we got a chart. Asparagus you can get out there. Onion, parsnips, peas. Peas like it cool.
So like before the last frost or still wait until the last frost date?
You can start those before,
Okay.
outside. Usually with the cabbage and things like that, people will sometimes start those indoors and then set them out. You watch your temperatures at night. If it's going to, get below freezing, get some kind of cover over them to protect them. Otherwise, most of those are ready to go in the ground as soon as you can work the ground.
Okay, so the seedling size really isn't the biggest issue when we're talking about starting to put things outside. It's more or less if the weather is right for them.
Right. Yeah, right now, you could put your cabbage plant out in the garden end of April, no problem. It won't have a problem. You put your tomato plant out there at the same time and you're not going to have a tomato plant.
The slightest freeze will.
Yep. So there's some plants that do like it cooler. And like peas, I mean, you can do succession planting then too. In 2 weeks, plant another row of them. Or I do wide rows where, I can get it from both sides and you're not wasting, have a little skinny row and then you have a wide row of path. You're wasting a lot of garden space. Do a wide row of your peas and then you're not wasting so much garden. Some warm weather crops that you do want to wait and transplant later, things like celery, cucumbers, eggplants, melons, okra, pepper, pumpkins, rhubarb. You can that's usually roots. Squash, sweet potatoes, which is hard for us to get in a decent time to plant up here. By the time we get them, everybody's done with their garden, or they've got their garden all sectioned off, and it's Swiss chard, tomato, and watermelons. Those are all Swiss chard. You can plant right in the garden, but a lot of them, they're better if you can transplant.
So like for your peppers and your tomatoes, since they seem to be some of the more popular vegetables that we grow around here, how early would you want to start them indoors before you put them out?
Well, if we find our tomato pack here again, it should tell us. There we go. So it's telling me here when to plant outside, generally starting indoors. They can be directly seeded outdoors is when it warms up. And usually for the more sensitive plants, 52 degrees.
Okay.
So your beans, corn, things like tomato seeds, wait till the soil is warmed up to 52 degrees. If you're starting indoors, it says 6 to 8 weeks before the last frost. And so we usually say Mother's Day is about the time when we have our last frost. So that's about the middle of May. So if we go back 6 or 8 weeks, we're about that time right now, almost.
Yeah,
start those.
About middle of March or so.
So we can be starting the tomatoes, the peppers, I know you can be starting. It's a little early for cabbage yet, but I have some started anyway. There's some things, I said the pansies was a tricky one to get started because you got to watch the soil temperature for those guys. Another touchy one, and it tells you on the package that it is a little bit tougher to do, but you can do it. Rosemary is a sensitive one. The basil, that one is usually pretty good to start with, but it does not like cold. And you put this thing out too early, if it even looks like it's going to be cold, your basil will die.
So pretty much just thoroughly read the back of the seed packet. It will tell you how many weeks before frost to start if you wish to start indoors, or whether it's better to put it outside. Planting temperatures. When we are talking about soil temperatures, how do you regulate that if you've got your seeds you're trying to start in your house?
One thing that you can do, and I've got it underneath all my little seeds over here, is a germinating station. And what it is, you can buy this, different greenhouses, garden centers will have little kits for germinating your seeds. Comes with a little pocket where you can put your soils in there. It's got a cover, our little dome. We've got a tray here, and this one doesn't have the holes in it, so It doesn't sit all the way on the bottom, so be very careful watering because you don't want your plants sitting in water. They do not like it. But the other thing it comes with is a heating pad.
Okay.
So you put the heating pad there and it will gently warm, though keep that whole thing warm. Put the cover on top, that's going to keep some of the heat in too. Now if you have this in front of a sunny window, get that cover off. You're going to have cooked vegetables when you come home. So
you could use a heating mat, or I've heard of people if they've got radiant heat, you could set them on a radiator.
Just watch how heat, you know, how high that heat gets on that. The other one too is you can put it like on top of your dryer.
Okay.
If you do the dryer thing once in a while, or your refrigerator. Some refrigerators are warm on top but not hot. So that's another one that you can do.
Just something to add a little bit more heat than what room temperature would be. And once the seedlings are up, what do we want to do with that heat?
Then we want to get it away from that heat. Then they like it a little bit cooler. You know, 70 degrees is good for germinating, but once they've come through, you've got your first set of leaves there, then you want to turn that heat down. And you can go down to like 55, 60 degrees, and it likes that better. The plant will stay shorter. It'll get stockier. And the other thing too, so it doesn't get so leggy, is to have the light source close to it. You know, if you're working with fluorescent lights that are, you know, way at the top and your plants are sitting on the floor, they're going to try to stretch to reach that light. So if you can get that closer to that light source, that's better too.
So keep it close to the light, keep it warm until they germinate, then cool them down really well.
And keep that light there for them once they've germinated. So.
And I see you've got some other ideas for pots.
And these are things too that you can start them in the little peat pots, and this one is actually manure, made out of manure. So you can use little pots like that to start them. I've got some peat pots in different sizes here that mostly with this size right here, I would do more transplanting into them.
So start something in this size.
Start something smaller.
Maybe what, 2-3 weeks before you plan on starting to put them outside? Put them into something a little bit bigger?
If they're getting leggy, especially tomatoes are great. Once your tomatoes get that second set of leaves on, they're ready to be transplanted. And if they're getting, you know, fairly tall, you put some dirt in here and you can put that tomato in deep. Tomatoes about the only one that you plant deeper. Everything else you plant it as deep as it is in the little pot that you started it in. But tomatoes, if they get leggy, you can sink them down in there and you leave that much, or you know, a couple sets of leaves at the top, and that works. What I've got here is what you were talking about. These are little peat pots, but you put them in the water and let them soak, and they swell up. You can put that one in there too. And we'll just set that there and wait for a while because it does take a little while.
So once they swell up, what would you put them in?
You can put them in a tray with ventilation, with holes on the bottom, because that's kind of your best bet. If you look at that tray, you've got the holes in the bottom. The one that we had over here, there's no holes. And the worst thing you can do for a seedling is have it in a wet bed. You know, you don't like sleeping in a wet bed, and the plants don't either. They will dampen off and you'll lose your plants. You have to make sure that we have some drainage.
Some adequate drainage. So we want drainage so that they stay moist but not wet.
Great.
We want to keep them warm until they're up. Keep the light source close. Any other tips and tricks you've got for us?
Just keep an eye on things. You know, if you planted them, the 2 or 3, once you get a couple sets of leaves on there, you'll be able to tell which is your dominant plant. Get in there and pinch that off. Make sure you're cleaning your hands before you get in there. If you're going from one type of plant, oh, this one's dead, I don't know why, and you pinch him off, and then you move, you know, start touching some of the other plants, you're transferring some of the disease to the next plants. So you want to make sure your hands and tools are clean. My utility knife gets cleaned every once in a while because I'm out there doing a little trimming once in a while, different little things. So you want to do that. So.
And I have a question. Does the type of pot that we use, the peat pellets or the peat pots or the 4-packs, does that make any difference based on our soil type that we're going to be transplanting our plants into?
Not too much. I think the thing with the plastic versus some of the natural things is how you feel about them. You know, what do I want to do for saving the environment, being green, and that kind of thing. Like the manure pots, you know, made from manure, hey, that's good. It's also good for the plants. It's got a little nutrient in there. The cocoa mulch, or the cocoa peat pots, these are cocoa pots. Anyway, those will break down in your garden, and that'll be good. The one thing with the peat pots, though, is that when you plant them, you do want to plant it so that the top is underground. If you leave it up, it dries out, and it dries the whole inside then too, and your roots won't go out.
I suppose it could wick the water right out, so you want to make sure that it's covered well.
Or you can tear it down a little bit. If your plant is way down, you know, you've been watering it and some of the soil's kicked out, it's packed down a little bit, you can tear that top part off or cut that top part off and just throw it in your garden. It'll break down. Some other things, you know, these are a little harder, so they're going to hold up a little more, but these two are a biopot. These, after a year or so, will break down in your garden also. I think these are made out of rice hulls.
Okay.
So.
And then I saw you had one other household item to touch on as far as planting in. We don't have much time left.
You don't need to go with the expensive ones. You can grab your egg carton.
That's what I always like to do with my kids.
And you put your little bit of dirt in there, you know, and you know, the whole thing here. And what you can do is just tear the top off and put it on the bottom. It's a little protection for wherever you're putting your seeds. But, you know, watering this in, it's going to hold the water pretty good, but yet drain out. It's probably best to put a little bit of a hole in there to get that extra wet moisture out. But these things, you tear them apart and you plant them in your garden and they break down and you're not going to see it next year. So.
Well, Cindy, thank you for all of your information on starting these seeds. And for more information, you can log on to ksmq.org and click on Garden Connections. You can catch past episodes, join the blogs, and tell us about your garden experiences. Now that you've got your seeds started, sit back and watch them grow. Tune in next week when we'll talk about ideas for different types of gardens you may want to plant. Thank you for joining us. I'm Amy Whitaker. See you next week.
Scarecrow, wooden cross, blackbird and bomb. 400 empty acres used to be my farm.